Hey, welcome to chapter 4 of How to Build an App. My name is Sarah Smith, and this is probably the core episode, I would say, of my series about how to build an app. It finally digs into actually building an app, what that means as part of a team. I'm a software engineer, been doing software engineering for 20 years. So if you too are technical, you're of course a developer or engineer, you might have been listening along, you think, well, when's she actually going to get down to coding? The point of this video is to really dig into, I think, what is my core message for this entire series, which is you need a team. So even if you personally have the skills to create the code, to build an app, your effort is not free, and therefore you need to have a budget for your time as well as money. And this episode is about what that team looks like to actually create that app. I was in startup co-working spaces for a decade more or less, and I saw so many teams fail, so many businesses, startups, folks who were mortgaging their house, folks were getting big investments, sometimes from family, only to find that they were failing. And these failures are preventable. We keep hearing about a technical failure, but the reality is most of the failures relate to human error of some sort, whether it's judgment or something else. But the good news, right? The good news is that's preventable. Half, maybe even more than that, of these so-called technical failures could have been stopped if we actually followed what I'm going to teach in this first part of how to build an app. And then the second half of this same content, which will dig into even more technical stuff. However, as a team, none of you involved can afford to throw it over the fence to the technical person. Like, if there's anybody sitting in front of this who's just about to get up and walk out of the room, sit down in your chair before you waste all your money. Because the thing is, most of the failures I saw were from some team members, maybe even most team members, throwing it over the fence to one particular member of the team that then has to try to struggle to pull the effort back onto course before you go off a cliff. So building an app then, in the context of what I'm about to say to you now, is related to a whole team getting together and trying to create an app-based business and an app or set of apps to service that business. I've talked in previous episodes about what kinds of apps there are. Now, some of you might have found that a little bit tedious. Please go back and review that. If you don't know the difference between a native app and a web app, if you don't know what a hybrid app is, if you don't know what a progressive web app, please go back and review that material. Because when we're building an app, how do we know we've got something that is the result of all of our labors and expense? As I mentioned in the previous video, building an app revolves around that team creating something that's going to run on different platforms. It could be the phone, it could be the web browser, it could even be an Apple TV, as we have there in the foreground over there. But whatever platforms you've chosen, those technical things are not a success in and of themselves. That has to be married to a complete strategy that involves all members of your team pulling together. So you can't do this thing where it's like, oh, the engineers will take care of building the app, we're just going to throw it over the fence. You know, it'll go on the Apple TV, we'll make a ton of money. It'll go on the iPhone, we'll make a ton of money. It'll go on Android, people will download it. Just that is a recipe for disaster. So I think probably one of the biggest mistakes that folks make when they get into the idea of building an app is not understanding that app development happens in cycles. I'd like to encourage you, if you're paying attention in this video because you don't want to lose all of your house, that take a little moment to study this diagram. Now, I've purposely made this pretty folksy looking because I would draw this diagram over and over for my consulting clients. And I would draw it right in front of them with just a felt pen. And that is because this is encapsulating the core message, I think, of what it is to build an app. So along the top, we have our product, and it starts off, we've got basically nothing. We've got a raw frame that we're planning to fill. Maybe it's a spot on the App Store, or it's a web property that exists at a domain, but we haven't filled anything in there. And then we're just going to start getting the team spun up, and we're going to start trying to ship features into that product space. So the thing to note about this is we're building up this flywheel of activity in the team. And as we move forward towards our progress, our milestones in the whole project, we've got more and more features coming out, and you can see that there in the central part of this rather folksy diagram. You can see some of the features have been built up. And our team is really starting to hum now. We've got a bit more solidity to our ways of working. And then finally on the right, we see that app, that product. It's pretty much built. Maybe there's a couple of little missing jigsaw puzzle pieces. But we've got our team fully operating. That flywheel is spinning, and we're able to quickly recover to fill those missing gaps. Now, this is what I mean by cycles. What is critical here is that you are not building an app so much as you are building the capability represented below that line. I'll say that again. You are not building an app, you are building the capability to keep delivering those app updates. Now, that capability resides in your team. It resides in your code base, which is something I'll explain in the part 2 of this talk. You're building it in your relationship with your stakeholders and the ways of working, your rituals, everything to do with how you as a team get together to deliver product. If you don't have what's below that line, it doesn't matter how perfect that iteration of that product is. Like, let's say, for example, you've got launch day. That's that product, you ship it out, there's a couple of little missing pieces. If your team is shot to hell, you've got no team dynamics, no collaboration, the wheels are basically fallen off underneath that line there, you're never going to be able to fix those missing pieces. And you might say to yourself, well, that's fine, we burnt the team, no worries, we've got the app shipped, we can, make it up later, we'll hire some people in 6 months' time. Problem. The app platforms, remember the previous slide, those platforms, they get updated. Suddenly things don't work anymore. Suddenly there's a change to some privacy law, or Google brings out a new requirement that you have to ship, and suddenly your app is withdrawn from the marketplace. This happens. Just Google for it. Google removed my app from the store. It happens all the time. So you need those developers, that capability there all the time. So TLDR, app development happens in cycles, and I'd like you to take an exercise to just get a texter and see if you can reproduce on a index card like I have here, this diagram, and then that way you can just pull folks aside and just explain it to them. No, you cannot throw this over the fence to the engineers or whoever. We need you on that Zoom call. We need you down in the office where everything's happening. You need to come over to the garage with me right now and sit down with the rest of the team.